kind of moving on here, guys, to our next half. Hopefully the fun half. We'll see. We'll see how fun it is. But again, you voted. We heard you. These are the top 5 storylines of the season as voted by you, the fans. 5, Auburn beats a top 10 Ole Miss. This was Brian Harson's first top 10 win at Auburn. Roger McCreary has a year of years. Highest rated player in college football at his position as rated by Pro Football Focus. Tank just decides not to leave. Number 3 was a guy choosing not to do something. 2, Brian Harsin closes a top 10 class, top 20 class. A little recency bias there probably, but Auburn wins on the Bayou for the first time in 2 decades, came in as the number 1 moment in the season. Now, going back to Ole Miss, that win was significant. It was the beginning of hope that this season could be more than just a first-year head coach trying to make waves. I think people started to believe that we could possibly win the SEC West after that game.
I think this is the game that got our hopes up a little too high. Because was this our highest ranked win of the season?
Yes.
Yeah.
Had to be.
So this 100%. Was our highest ranked win of the season. And this is when all the talk started. Hey, we can still win the SEC West. We can go to the SEC championship. It was a good win for Auburn. But I do think it got our hopes up a little too high.
I remember leaving that game being surprised on, okay, Auburn won that. It was pretty commanding, and none of it really felt fluky. I mean, Auburn had several key 4th down stops, but Lane Kiffin going with the hashtag analytics on all of that. But it didn't feel like Auburn lucked into something. It felt like Auburn just lined up and beat a top 10 team. And the fact that Ole Miss kind of, they got knocked down a little bit and then they kept winning and ended up being a top 10 team. Clearly a big moment, especially when you look and see what Matt Corral could possibly be at the next level. And depending on where you look, some people think he could be really good. Some people think, maybe he's not a fit, but all in all, I mean, this was the thing that stands out the most was just, okay, it didn't feel fluky at any point of the game.
The thing about big wins is you enjoy them, but you have a tendency to overlook things that could be a problem moving forward.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Auburn fans kind of glossed over, and it became a trend, is that Auburn only managed to score 3 points in the second half. And that began to become a trend for Auburn moving forward. But when you beat a highly ranked team in Ole Miss, who's had a lot and ended up having a good year this year, I mean, this excitement, because one of the things we were looking for is a signature win, right? That's that win. That's the game you look for. That's the start of a big season, a season that gets a team on the run. And we thought at the time, we were willing to overlook all those things with us not scoring, because we thought we got our signature win that's going to propel us forward. And unfortunately, that did not happen. But this was a big win because of the hope that we were hungry for in year 1 of the Harsin era.
Yeah. JG, any closing thoughts on?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that's the second best performance Auburn put together this year. And they beat a good team, a team that only lost 2 games. So, I mean, it's Ole Miss at its absolute peak. That's the best Ole Miss team that we've ever seen. That's probably ever been. I mean, I think it's their first 10-win regular season. So
they were kind of hobbled in that game, weren't they?
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah. Corral got kind of nicked. He had got nicked up at Tennessee, right? And then
they were down a receiver or 2.
Yeah,
that's true. So they weren't quite at full power, but I thought that was a great win. And again, it did kind of stoke those hopes, right? And yeah, again, Ole Miss is a good ball club. They're really good this year. And I think part of the reason this is number 5 and not higher is because it's Ole Miss. And I think some people are like, well, Auburn should beat Ole Miss because Auburn beats Ole Miss all the time. But Ole Miss this year was really good. And like, for instance, LSU is kind of not so good.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think coaching talent is at an all-time high in the SEC West at this moment as well, too. So Lane Kiffin has gone in there and done a good job, but there's just a lot to be scared of with Mike Leach and Nick Saban and now Brian Harsin, and Sam Pittman is doing a good job at Arkansas. There are not a whole lot of outs when you look around the SEC West. Not that there ever was, but I think this game kind of epitomized that. Moving down to number 4, Roger McCreary had a year of years. I would say he probably made a case for first round of the NFL draft this year. Did he not? What do you guys think?
We'll have to see how he grades at the combine because, man, the way they play in college a lot of times doesn't have a great. It doesn't necessarily lead you to decide where he's going to go in the draft. It's more about what he does at the combine.
Guys,
Honestly. But is he a heck of a player? Yes, and you got to remember he was like a throw-in at the end.
Yeah.
I think Auburn took him away from either South Alabama or Troy.
South
Really?
Alabama. Yeah.
And it was one of those deals where it's like, oh, God, he was going to go to South Alabama. And then he played some. Really, the first time we saw him was in that Tennessee game.
Yeah.
When Tennessee came to Jordan Hare and threw all those long passes, and it was like, oh, God, this is what they've done. They went and stole this kid from South Alabama. Now he's getting burned. But he ended up being one heck of a player. And I honestly think that having that tough start to his career is a big reason why he's so good now. It just burned him up, man.
Yeah.
You guys see Roger McCreary coming?
Yeah, I did. I was talking about my podcast 2 years ago. I really like what Roger McCreary does. I liked him more in Kevin Steele's defense. At least that's what I said going into the season, even a few games into this year. But he's learned how to play off ball as well as the bump and run. So I think the NFL is going to love him. He's got tape doing all kinds of different things. And I mean, it's December, so mock drafts. What all do they mean? But pretty much everyone you look at, he's slated. Mid-20s to the end of the first round. A lot of people saying Dallas is the perfect fit for him. So we'll see. Like I said, it's December. Got a long way to go. But, yeah, what a great story. And, he's opting out of the bowl game, which makes sense. He's entering the NFL draft. And I guess the next time we'll see him will be in Mobile, where he's from, to compete and work out in front of scouts for the Senior Bowl. So that's pretty cool.
Closing thoughts on Roger?
I think he made his case. If he is going to go first round, he made his case right at the end of the season by having one or two fantastic games right at the end.
I just thought it was amazing how the reason why people like Pritchett and Simpson got picked on so much is because the offense knew do not throw the ball to McCreary's side because it's an incompletion waiting to happen. And so when he got into the Iron Bowl and there were opportunities and he had the match up with Mechie, he won his fair share of battles in that game. And I think that was an impressive, a great showing from him with the whole nation watching that game. And so best wishes to McCreary. He served Auburn well. He owes Auburn nothing. Best wishes, man.
I will say this, man. Auburn, through the years, has gotten so many good kids out of Mobile who were not great or big-time recruits. You think about Derek Marks was like a 3-star guy. A lot of people thought he could be a basketball player. Nick Fairley, was a tight end / power forward. Came out of Mobile. Antonio Coleman, who was a little more highly rated, but man, that kid worked unbelievably, just indefatigable. And then Rogers, another one. Damian Craig's another one. Telling you, you should gamble on Mobile kids because more often than not, they become something bigger than you think they're going to be.
Yeah,
they got that heart.
They do. Listen, coming in at number 3 is something that we can neither confirm nor deny, but we heard. And it was about Tank Bigsby choosing to remain at Auburn. Now, rumors were running rampant that Tank was unhappy and possibly looking to transfer. A lot of people were saying to Georgia. And with the new portal rules and not having to lose a year, a lot of fans got scared that it was a real possibility that Tank might actually leave Auburn. I find it interesting that Tank possibly leaving, came in higher than Bo actually leaving. But
he stayed.
That's funny. But guys, what do we think about this? Is this Brian Harsin's best recruiting job? This recruiting cycle is convincing Tank to stay.
Well, how much of it was Harsin? We've heard a ton about Tank Bigsby's relationship with Carnell. And then, it sounds like there were other meetings had outside of him just sitting down with Harsin. Sounds like that was one of the, not the first meeting that he had. So I don't know. But as far as what the staff did to keep him at Auburn, whatever they did, it was the right thing to do.
I feel like they pushed harder to keep Tank than they did Bo. I'll say that. And there were definitely conversations about Tank leaving. I mean, there was a time when I thought Tank was going to leave too, but when they made him a priority and they said, hey, man, we're going to make this work, then at that point, I was like, he's staying for sure. But I never got that feeling about Bo. I'm just ruminating here.
Guys,
theoreticals.
What was kind of the feeling when you thought Tank was going to leave? Was that tied to anything specific? Did you ever hear anything like that?
No, just frustration with the way the run game worked. I don't think, Tank doesn't look at his offensive lineman as the problem, and that's good.
Yeah.
He doesn't take it to an individual and say, Nick, you need to be better, whatever, KJ, you need to block better, whatever. He looks at it as like a systemic thing. And if I'm not getting my yards, and we know Tank's awesome, we know that.
Right.
If I'm not having an opportunity to get my yards, we got a problem. And I think Harsin was explaining how they're going to be doing more, gap stuff next year, which it benefits him. He's not really a zone guy.
Mm-hmm.
They were asking him to do a lot of zone stuff, which really plays into what Jarquez does better. But I think next year you'll see some differences to the run game that accentuate the things that Tank does well, which is namely giving a predetermined gap and getting downhill and trucking people. I think that's what he does.
I think he's right when he says it's systemic. I mean, we asked Harsin in a presser about the balance that we saw in the first two games versus the balance we were seeing thereafter, where it seemed like they were perfectly balanced between run and pass. And he made a statement, and we fact checked him on it about, hey, once you get down, you got to start throwing the ball more. And in the first quarter of every single game, we were almost perfectly balanced on run and pass. And as soon as they got a little bit down, they started slinging it all over the place and kind of getting away from that, right? I thought we were a pretty good run team to start the season, and then we turned out to not be a great run team, which was shocking to me.
Well,
with the backs that we had.
You don't have the linemen to push people out of the way against Georgia and Alabama, and you do against Akron and Georgia State, although Georgia State was not as convincing as it should have been, right?
Yeah. It seemed like that was their strength, though, wasn't it? Run blocking was supposed to be the thing that they were better at.
They were good at it last year or the year prior, for sure.
Yeah, decent at least.
Yeah.
I think with this was fans' worst nightmare almost come to fruition, because it started with the South Carolina game when you can see Tank visibly annoyed. So when you mention of it being systemic with the offense, I think about that game, and from there the rumors just went rampant, and it didn't die down until maybe a few weeks ago when we began to calm down about the whole Tank situation. And so I think most fans are relieved, because we know that was our best player on offense. And moving forward in a critical year with Harsin, you need your best guys to go to war with you. So great job from them pulling him back into the fold.
Chase?
So this was our second time in 2021 that we thought Tank might be leaving, because we had the rumors swirling in, what was it, February or March of this year. And then we get to the South Carolina game, like Caesar mentions. And my question is, how much in that game was that one play a nudge for him to lean towards transferring? And the play I'm referring to is that 4th and 1 on our own. What was it, 35? And you saw, that's the one where everybody said you saw Tank visibly upset or visibly annoyed with the play call. So I was just curious as to how much that could have been a factor. I know it's one play in one game, but at the same time, he's got to be thinking, I'm Tank, I can get 1 yard.
Yeah, well, when JG says Tank views it as systemic, that's a fancy way of saying the coaches better give me the damn ball.
Right. Pretty much.
In a way that helps me be better.
Right.
And I would say, Chase, it was brewing already. And that almost was the culmination of something he was already frustrated about to begin with.
And especially in a game when he'd been chewing up yardage.
Yeah, there was no reason to go away from the run in that game. I felt that way at Penn State.
Yes.
They at no point stemmed the tide of our run, and somehow we just got away from running it. I think we ended the game close to 200 yards rushing. I mean, it was a good amount, and I just don't ever remember a time during that game where I felt like they were actually stopping the run. I think we stopped the run. We stopped our own run in that game, and maybe that's the frustration that Tank felt. So getting down to our top two here, we're closing out. Again, a little recency bias, but Brian Harsin closes a top 20 recruiting class. Now, I love this subject, and I'm definitely going to start with JG on this one, because there was a lot of panic early in the season about recruiting.
Oh, yeah.
And my thought was it was always going to go this way, because recruits aren't going to commit early to a guy who came from out of conference and you haven't seen him yet. right? So if he was going to close, he was always going to have to close late in my eyes. This was the way this was going to go. Now, we had 2 guys on staff that I don't know, I can't confirm, but reportedly part of the reason they got hired was for recruiting purposes. Ties in the South, familiarity with the area and the region in Mike Bobo and Cornelius Williams. Both those guys are gone, and they had to find a way to close out this class strong, and hot damn, they did it. It was defensive heavy, but still, they did it. Guys, what do we think about this potentially top 10 class if they figure out some things?
Yeah, it was huge. And Trevon Reed, I'm telling you, he was the ace in the hole. He was the secret weapon. Yeah. I mean, he was terrific. And then being able to flip Rim and then being able to flip Woodyard, which a lot of that work was done before T. Reed came along, to secure Osbury was huge. And the wide receiver from St. Thomas Aquinas, who was a very late addition to this whole thing.
Brown?
That took some serious work. Yeah, Camden Brown. It took a lot of work to get him turned around. So they turned some dudes late that I was not expecting. I mean, I knew they were ranked like 41 going a week into it.
Right.
A week away. And I was like, they're not, everybody in the bunker was like, oh my God. I knew they're going to be a lot better than that. But I knew they were going to flip Woodyard. I knew that. But Rim was always kind of like, I don't know. And then Camden Brown to me was like, I really don't know. And if they had been able to get Curtis Berry, which they ended up not, but if they had, they would be in the top 10 right now. So it really came down to one dude. That was going to be a huge fight for the kid from Pike Road. He ended up going to Alabama. But the fact that Auburn legitimately flipped a kid from Alabama to Auburn, I mean, that hadn't happened in a while. And it happened
first time since 2014.
Yeah, and that's only happened 2 or 3 times since I've been covering Auburn. Craig Sanders was one that jumps out to me, but they wanted Woodyard. Alabama did, and Auburn got him. He's good.
Guys, talk to me about this top 20 class, and let's talk about a little bit about the NFL draft feel that this signing day had.
Oh, yeah. I love that. Go Zach.
Okay. Yeah. I thought it was awesome. I think he's sending a message. I think everything that they do, regarding social media and all of that is all about recruiting. And for the last 8 years, the message has been, come to Auburn. You can be a part of something bigger than yourself. You can be a part of the Auburn family. And all of a sudden, everything you saw from a promotion standpoint that Auburn, the athletics team put out was about, okay, come here and win. You can win. And also the NFL draft. I mean, they started putting more of Derek Brown, which I don't think Auburn uses enough of. I don't think they use the success of Derek Brown near enough.
Right.
You saw D Ford in a few promo things, and that's a first round pick that we don't talk about that much. And so I think that was huge. And then whenever, he's calling these kids after they sign and he's going up to the podium and announcing it, he wants to give these kids that feeling, and he's making a promise to them that he's going to do everything he can to allow them to feel that feeling 3 or 4 years from now. And I think that's something that's pretty powerful. We'll see if the message sticks or not.
Yeah, definitely thought it was powerful. Caesar?
Kudos to Auburn for how they've handled their social media in the past year, from the winter workouts to the practice to signing day. They've been out of the box as opposed to how we've addressed social media and how we've marketed the Auburn football program over the past several years. So it's just fun to see kids get into it. It's exciting. I like the ideas that Harsin and his staff are bringing to Auburn, and I hope it pans out down the road.
Yeah. Chase?
Along those same lines, I think whoever they hired for their creative director has just done an incredible job. They've embraced, there's a big meme culture with Auburn on Auburn Twitter, and it's been embraced by the creative directors. What was the last thing that came out? ABC, always be recruiting.
Yeah, recruiting finger.
Yeah, the recruiting finger. And it's good to see that they're with it enough to know where the Auburn fans are, where the Auburn beat writers are. And it's a lot of fun, and I'm glad they're having fun with it. But getting back to the class, I mean, it was hard to see us behind Vandy for so long. I think that's what had so many people upset was, yes, we were always going to have a hard time from the start with Brian Harsin being new to the SEC, but just being behind Vandy was just something that did not sit well with people, especially since we had Vandy's former coach on staff.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, this was This was the storyline they needed after closing the season out with 4 straight losses.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say this to people. A lot of people don't know this. Auburn has a very large group of people who work on their social media. I don't know how many people it is, but it's 7 to 10 probably, who work specifically on the football, like the social media strategy for football, and then also with the creative folks who come up with some of the great graphics they do. I mean, I think they've had 3 creative directors in the past year, so it's not really one person. It's actually been 3 people that have been doing that, and there is so much thought and planning that goes into that. Like their signing day thing, where like Harsin was up at the podium. It almost seemed like it was the draft, right? I mean, he was like at the podium, like the commissioner does, and they had the tote board behind him. There's a lot of effort that goes into that, and I think for your average fan, they're just like, "Oh, that's cool, I like it." Well, that took 6 months to figure that out, to plan that out, to run it by Harsin, to get him on board with it, and all that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. And those folks deserve a lot of credit, because I agree that thing went off without a hitch, and I thought it was a huge plus for them in recruiting, and they needed one.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, if you can see it, you can buy it. And when it comes to getting recruits to be able to visualize what you're selling to them about why to come to Auburn, this social media stuff is very, very, very important. I think they pulled it off. So going into our number one storyline of the 2021 season for Auburn football was Auburn beats LSU. We get our first win down in the Bayou in over 20 years. Now, this was the emergence of Backyard Bo. This is the storyline of this game was Backyard Bo, because I'll tell you, statistically, we did not have a great game. But Auburn fans did not care. And I'll tell you what, JG, I didn't get a chance to talk to you after this game, but on our post game, a lot of people felt like I was too negative about the win, but I didn't see anything that made me feel positive about Georgia the next week. I was happy, but I was like, oh man, we play like that next week, we're going to get destroyed.
I mean, they just gutted it out over a bad LSU team, right? I mean, and it's good. Auburn needed to win the game, right? It's been 22 years. But that was not, I don't know. It just wasn't a one shining moment thing for me. Not for me.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I thought beside Backyard Bo, Jarquez Hunter on that ended up being the game-winning drive, the ceiling drive was pretty amazing. We just have not had luck down there at all. And so it felt like this huge weight off a lot of fans' shoulders that we finally went down there and we beat the worst LSU team in 20 years.
Right.
It was the worst.
And Auburn had lost to LSU teams that it has had no business losing to in the past down there. But, they found a way. I wonder, and it's one, but I didn't put it as my number one. Partially because it kicked off at midnight. I remember I watched that game okay, I'm gonna stay awake. I'm gonna stay awake through this thing. But an 8:00 kick that got delayed some, if I recall. So that was what a disaster.
Yeah, and to that point, Zach, people were wondering where was our enthusiasm after the game. I'm sleeping.
Okay, it's 1 o'clock in the morning.
I'm old. I'm older now, guys. I'm not in college where my nights just started. I'm ready for bed.
Yeah, that was a strange one. I considered going down to cover that one, and I was trying to do the math on what time I would get back in the morning if I caught the first flight out, and it just wasn't worth it. So Isaac made the trip. Ike made the trip, and he actually drove down there and stayed the night. But it was an interesting. It's interesting that again for the number one storyline of the year, the fans picked the best feel good win.
Yeah.
There's no way that's number one, man.
Hey, listen, I know it's a scientific poll, JG. It's a scientific poll.
The Iron Bowl that's the moment we're going to remember 20 years from now. That performance, that was insane. So good. That game was great. That's an epic game.
It was defensively. It was an epic game. So
it was an epic game the whole way. 4 overtimes.
Well, I'll tell you what. Damn it, fans, we're overriding you. Number one moment is you've been vetoed. No, but seriously, Chase, down in Baton Rouge, we get the win. What were your thoughts on that win?
This was all about breaking the curse. That was the big talk before the game. That was the big talk weeks leading up to it. Is can we break the curse, the Death Valley curse? And if we could, this would be a marquee win for Brian Harsin. Yes, it was a terrible LSU team, one of the worst we've seen in a while, but it's been since 1999 since we've won that game in Death Valley. So that's what this was all about. It was, to me, it helped represent a new era for Auburn. While it may not have been the most impressive win, it is still a marquee win because it's something we've not done in over 20 years.
Guys, closing thoughts on LSU?
Yeah, well said, Chase. I agree 100%. And I think, again, early in Harsin's tenure, you're hungry for something that signals that something's different about Auburn with this guy being here. And we can point to that game. And it was so on time because we were starting to wonder after Georgia State, did we get the right guy? You know, especially with Cornelius Williams getting fired. It's like, are we unraveling at the seams? So this win came at a very important time, and it eased fans at least for another 7 days before Georgia came into town. So
yeah, they took all that hope back.
Yeah,
it took all that hope back next week. No, well, guys, that's it. That's your top 10 storylines of the 2021 season, as voted on by you, the fans. Coming in with an honorable mention is Brian Harsin throws hats to the media.
Come on. You're making that up.
That was voted by one person?
As voted on by that one guy that was trolling this poll.
who shall definitely remain nameless.
I'll close this out by telling you here. I knew it was you. I'll close this out by just saying, after the Iron Bowl, I got a chance to talk to Coach Harsin for about 10 minutes. And I got the sense he was very somber, and I got the sense that he understood the gravity of being a head coach in the SEC and in the SEC West. Right. I got the impression that he understands there's work to do, and that how this season finished was not acceptable on any level. Right. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does to get it back on the right track. Guys, thanks for joining me. I got G Tate, publisher and owner at auburnsports.com. Go check them out for all your recruiting news. You guys know C-Dub, Zac Blackerby at Locked On Auburn, Infinite Auburn, Chase, Holden. Support your Auburn content creator community, guys. We're signing off. War Eagle.